Demography is destiny, an ageless phrase coined by French philosopher Auguste Comte. He was talking about real estate in 19th century Europe. But pick any country today, it still rings true. A young, healthy population is a blessing, an aging, dependent one, well, not so much. China realized this in the 1970s. They were on the cusp of a population disaster, so they introduced the one-child policy. They legislated demographics. Did it work? Well, it did, on paper at least. China's birth rates dropped. The immediate crisis was averted. But here's the problem. In China, family planning was not an option. It was the law. And when you legislate demographics, destiny kicks you hard. And this is the result. 12 million babies were born in 2020, the lowest recorded births since the 1960s. In crude terms, China is running out of people. It's running out of factory workers and soldiers. How is Beijing planning to tackle this? With more legislation. Last month, China unveiled the three-child policy. And it's exactly as it sounds, 3 kids per family. But some experts said it may be too little too late, so China is going one step further. According to reports, Beijing is planning to lift all birth restrictions by 2025. No more one-child or two-child or three-child policies. Parents can decide for themselves, at least theoretically, because in China, well, you never know. But why 2025? Why not immediately? You see, China follows the system of 5-year plans. The current one expires in 2025, so the next plan will supposedly eliminate birth restrictions. It will start from northeastern China. This is often called the Chinese Rust Belt. In the last decade, population dropped 1.2% in this region, so it is an obvious candidate to test out the policy. But the question is, will it work? Family planning is extremely organic. Nobody has kids because the state asked them to. The conditions must be perfect to raise a family. People should want it. This means affordable healthcare too, a vast school network, and economical living conditions. In China, that is not the case. I'll give you an example. In 2005, the cost of raising a child was $76,000 in China. Today, it is $300,000, 4 times more in 15 years. So there's no incentive for Chinese couples to have kids. It's just too expensive. How will Beijing fix this? By cracking down on tuition centers. You heard that right. China is cracking down on tuition centers to boost its failing birth rate. Let me explain this. One of the biggest expenses in raising a child is education, and not just schools, but private tuitions. It's a $120 billion industry in China. They work through weekends, vacations, summer. It's less of education, more of an assembly line, an early introduction into the rat race in China. There are 2 problems with Chinese tuitions. 1, they're a nightmare for children. 2, they're very expensive. So Beijing is planning a crackdown. A new watchdog will regulate private tuitions in the country. What will this watchdog control? Fees, content, schedules, training qualifications. Basically, it's a communist takeover of private tuitions in China. And on the face of it, it looks appealing. A breather for kids and less expenses for parents. But there is a backhanded motive here. Private tuitions is the new frontier in China. Nearly 75% of Chinese children attend them, which means it is a cash cow. Every Chinese tech giant has waded into tuitions. ByteDance, Tencent, Alibaba, they're all in this game. Obviously, the regime does not like this. Xi Jinping wants schools to educate children, and they want the government to regulate it. When Beijing announced this decision, tuition companies in China lost billions of dollars in market value. Some of them were planning to announce IPOs, but not anymore because the Chinese regime is taking charge of tuitions. Another motive is to control content. China says it wants to maintain the quality of tuitions, which is another way of saying there isn't enough propaganda there. At schools, this is not a problem because the party sets the curriculum. But private tutors had a free pass until now. Now, this new watchdog is going to decide the syllabus. It will also decide the professors who teach this syllabus. So 2 things can happen. 1, the tuition industry may perish altogether. All the regulations will spook new investors, and education will again be a state monopoly. The second thing that can happen is the tuition industry survives, not as a thriving business, but as a heavily controlled and censored wing of the regime. Either way, it's a win for Beijing. And that sums up the problem with Chinese policymakers. They do not want young blood. They want loyal, brainwashed young blood. If demography is indeed destiny, it is playing a cruel trick on China's innocent children. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.